Hi, listeners. This is episode 3 of The Elephant in the Room, the podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Hanson, and today I'm joined with a special guest, Alyssa. She gave me full permission to interview her as well as record her responses. Before we get into those questions, I do want to put out a quick trigger warning. This podcast is focusing on the concept of sexual assault, and as a survivor myself, I completely understand how much weight this topic holds and how triggering it can be at times. If there's any time during the podcast you feel the need to stop listening, I fully understand. I also want to point out that I will verbally read each question during this interview, so if certain aspects we discuss are triggering in any way, feel free to skip past that question. My number one priority is to make sure all participants in this podcast and every listener is comfortable and feels supported. So with that said, I will turn it over to Alyssa.
Yes, hello. My name is Alyssa Nowicki. I'm a senior here at Eau Claire. I'm majoring in psychology with a minor in family studies.
Nice.
And I plan to graduate this May. And I am personally also a survivor of sexual assault, and I thought it was, I felt comfortable to kind of share my story and contribute to this wonderful podcast. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate you being so comfortable and open, so I'm excited to hear your responses. So,
Thank you.
how would you define sexual assault?
I think that I would, if I had to put a definition towards it, I would say any sort of physical, sexual interaction that isn't wanted.
Second off, how would you define consent?
I would define consent as just a person who is enjoying the situation that they're in and okay with it and comfortable, and those intentions are clear.
How did you come to terms with what had happened? Did it take you a while to accept it, or did you find yourself repressing the memories? And could you elaborate on those two questions if they apply to you?
Yeah, I don't think that I accepted it right away. I mean, I knew kind of right away that it was not good. I right after was like, oh, wait a second. It didn't really fully hit me that it was what it was. I went into casa and then fully just tears everywhere, and then it was kind of like, well, that's how you know
it really impacted you.
Is for sure a case of sexual assault.
Sometimes it's hard to accept. To put it into words, it almost makes it more real, and that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
And I think that going into CASA definitely was a good resource because obviously the person in CASA is responsible to advocate for you and everything.
I think that I definitely would have continued to, because I didn't really go in until maybe a week or something later.
Yeah.
So I think I would have continued to repress the feelings and the situation and been like, oh yeah, it was whatever.
Sure.
I wouldn't have fully accepted it for what it was.
Maybe kind of almost justifying what the person did to you too. That really, it's hard not to do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's really easy for, at least for me, those thoughts to slip in well, why didn't I just be like, hey, can we not? But it does not work like that.
Afterwards, did you find yourself putting any blame on your shoulders, and what was your thought process?
It's kind of related to what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
I definitely, I did, because I just think that it's so easy for people in our society, at least in our age, to justify the actions of the other person and say well, I was really drunk, or I was doing this, and I didn't literally say, no, stop.
Right.
Obviously it's not going to work like that. You're in fight or flight mode. It's just not that simple. So yeah, and I just kind of grew up in a situation like that where so I did definitely justify his actions more than being oh, I'm at fault, but I was more maybe he didn't mean it, or
Yeah. And I think too that you were saying, in today's society it is so easy to victim blame almost, or to take sides with either party, which obviously, being the survivor in the situation, it's always that fear of, are people going to believe me or not?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not fair,
Yeah.
but it is kind of how it is, I
Yeah.
guess, in today's society. But I do hear you. I understand that.
Yeah, it's not like I had to like tell the person I was living with about it, because
Right.
I said like, I don't want this person coming over anymore, and it was
Yep.
kind of just like, I don't know, I think that for some people they don't realize how like real
Yeah.
this issue is. They're
Yeah.
just like, oh, that sucks, you know, like it's a real thing.
And of course that's going to take a lot. This is, you know, this happened to me, and
Yeah.
like explain it to that person, because if they were a friend that you guys had, mutual friend or something, or somebody you knew, this person did this to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you take things to administration and report what had occurred? If yes, how did that work and what was the outcome? And if not, can you think of any barriers that brought you to this decision? And I just want to put out there that there's no right or wrong answer, because reporting, not reporting is totally up to the survivor. So
yeah. The only thing I did was I went to CASA and I just talked about it, and I was asked, you know, like if I wanted to do anything further with it. And I didn't do anything. I did talk to the person after, saying like, hey, that was not okay.
Right.
And they did message me back, kind of, yeah, maybe apologizing, I guess.
Yeah.
So as long as they knew that it wasn't okay, and they said that they weren't going to do it again, I don't know if I can believe that.
Yeah.
But I just didn't personally feel the need to go further with it. So
Sure.
I think that's why I didn't. But thinking back, sometimes I think I should have, because I wouldn't want it to happen again to someone else. But
Yeah.
you know,
I think it takes a lot of courage too, even just to accept it. Again, that whole fear of, are they going to believe me?
Yeah.
What's the process going to be like? You know, you don't want anything bad to necessarily happen to the other person.
Yeah.
And that, I think, getting that chance to talk to that person afterwards maybe gave a sense of closure almost too. This has really impacted me. And
yeah, why I didn't want to bring it further, because I was thinking, oh, I don't have the time to do all of this.
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah.
I'm in school right now. I don't want to deal with this. You know,
Right.
It was kind of like all right, let's accept it, move on.
Yeah.
That might not be the healthiest thing, but you know, that's kind of the mindset that I.
Yeah. Do you as a survivor feel as though there are adequate resources available on campus to help with the healing process? Why or why not?
It's hard to give a yes or no.
Yeah.
But I honestly lean more towards no. I think that CASA is great, and I'm sure that, you know, we're better off than other schools.
Sure.
But I honestly like didn't even know what it was really until I had to like go out of my way to try to find it.
Like you said, it is hard to find those resources when you don't have any sort of starting point.
Yeah,
or, you know.
exactly. And also like when someone is in that situation, they're not really, I feel like they're not really going to want to go out of their way to search for those things, because of the stigma and things that could play a part. So I think it's important that those things are just there. It's hard because what do we do besides put up posters?
That's definitely something that we could change. I know that obviously with our generation, like technology is a huge thing. So maybe putting more out on social media or things like that. There is a lot of room for improvement when it comes to getting awareness out to the students. If you think resources could improve or become more known to survivors on campus, what changes do you think the university can make? So we kind of discussed that.
I think the social media thing is a good idea. This issue is just as important as others, like mental health. I think it should be stressed the same way, just as important and tied in with the counseling services.
I agree. Normalizing talking about it is something that would be such a huge step in a good direction. Just making it less scary and I guess more like open and welcoming to survivors if they felt, oh, I heard this person talking about their story and it inspired me to be open about mine. Experiencing what you experienced, it's going to affect you in a lot of different ways, mentally, physically. And I think just normalizing that. I think mental health is becoming more normal to talk about. It will make it seem just a bit less of a stigma, I guess, on it.
because so many people have experienced it,
And I think too that if you were able to find other people that are open about it, it gives that you kind of that sense of community too, that
Yeah.
there's people that can really relate to what you've gone through. And I think it's just something that's in kind of more on the back burner right now.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
that's upsetting. I think there's definitely many ways it could improve. So what is an aspect about sexual assault on college campuses that you want your fellow peers to know and understand?
There is a misconception that when it happens with drinking and in college, it's not as serious. I was talking about this before. I always, when I was little, thought that it was always a case of you were held at gunpoint in an alley, but like that is not the case. So yeah, it just needs to be literally just known about more.
Yeah.
Because I think some people might still be in that situation where they don't think that it happens all around us.
I think that's a really good point because, like you said, maybe hearing about those things you see in like movies or things that are portrayed in the media, sure, those stuff like that could happen, but there's a lot more to it than just that. And then last question, how has this experience impacted you?
That's a good question. I honestly think that it has made me reflect on past experiences.
Sure.
I think that this one was more obvious things in the past that also were cases of sexual assault. I think that was really good and eye-opening. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's been like a lot of negative impacts as well.
Sure.
But I wouldn't really wish the past to be different because obviously everything has brought me here.
Yeah.
I got to like talking with the person at CASA was really awesome, and I liked being able to do that, and it brought me closer to the counseling center, and that has played a big role in my life. So
I think that's a really good way to look at it too, because that shows growth from
exactly
when it first happened to where it is now. So
yeah, and I found myself being just really angry and like trying to get people to go against that person like on social media or something as like a coping mechanism. And looking back, I'm glad that I like moved on from that and realized that I don't need to do that necessarily. Like obviously what that person did was horrible and not right. There's other ways to go about it.
And I think too that it could give you the opportunity in the future to educate other people about it too, and let them know, or just even just sharing your story and putting it out there that like, it could be somebody that it could be a complete stranger. It could happen to you in this situation or that situation, and just like talking about your experience maybe could motivate others to do the same, to like develop and grow.
Because you're gonna have initial reactions and
absolutely
desires to maybe make that person really know what they did. You'll feel anger and sadness and things, but the most important thing is how you personally are like going to get through it, the help you need, and get better and grow from it. So
yeah, for sure. No, and I that was the last question, but like I want you to know like how appreciative like I am that you were so open and like provided your perspective, because I feel like things that you had to say, I know I can relate to, and I'm sure that other people, if they were to hear it too, they could really relate to it too. And I don't know if you have any like other comments or questions at all.
I don't think so. I just I'm glad that I was able to do this and talk about it because I think it gets repressed, and coming back and like realizing it and things, I think that's good.
I think that it is super healthy to talk about. It doesn't mean you have to talk about it, all the time. But if it were to come up here and there, to be able to just, I guess, again, reflecting on it and just seeing your progress too. I'm sure that has to be super motivating to know that, okay, I was at this point where I was super angry and upset and sad and all these different things, and now I've grown. Okay, well, if that's everything, that is another episode of The Elephant in the Room, the podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Hanson, signing off.